no short stories, no novels. These days, I don't write anymore. All I end up doing these days is translate. My mother, she passed away last year, and she was working on her memoirs, and now they will never be finished. But it's a beautiful gift. It's one of the most brutally beautiful gifts I've ever received, and I have come to these mountains to translate her memoir. The title of her memoir is one single word, time. What years are involved? A friend asked me recently. My mother was born in 1944, and she was born in the same year as my favorite writer, W.G. Sebald. Today I'm going to tell you about three things: how my mother became a writer, how I became a translator, and how the process of translation is healing me. But before I start all of that, let's begin with something else. Those early, very difficult years when I was trying to become a writer. And my mother would shield me from very nosy relatives who would ask questions, inane questions like, does your son have a big house, a big car, how many children, a beautiful wife? And she endured all of that, but she never complained. She always supported my writing. And around then, my first book got published, 17 Tomatoes, and this kind of simplified her job. And when more questions came, our son and daughter have 11 bathrooms, a huge ranch in California, 4 Hummers and BMWs. My mother was ready this time. She unfolded a huge newspaper article. She said, this is my son, and this is his book, and this book is available in 10,000 libraries in the world. She always read everything that I wrote. Once during our phone conversation, she asked me if anyone had translated my book, and I said, maybe into Spanish, not now. But has anyone translated the book? What about your own mother tongue, Punjabi? Have you forgotten? My mother grew up with a very exaggerated fear that this language of ours will soon become fossilized. And she would very painstakingly, she would teach me the Punjabi alphabet and grammar. Now, many friends of mine here in Canada, they pronounce or mispronounce Punjabi as Punjabi. Would you like to repeat it with me? It's pun as in pun. The word pun, it's a language, maybe it's made entirely out of puns. So let's say it, Punjabi. Punjabi. Thank you very much. And at that point, I told her, Mother, why don't you translate the book? And we forgot about that phone conversation. But that summer, when she visited me, she had a sample translation ready. And I read it right away. What struck me was that my mother, she got the emotional impact right. How did you do it, Mother? Oh, she talked about the importance of dictionaries, some discussion with my father, but how did you do it? And she got the message. She immediately cleared the kitchen table, and in 6 straight weeks, she had the first draft of the translation ready. She would go on these long walks, ask me pointed questions, and she would work. She would only handwrite. There were no laptops. She never learned how to use a computer. And it was then it occurred to me that there were 14 stories in my book, which I had written in English, and she had only translated 13 stories. She had skipped story number 9, and the story number 9 was the most problematic story. It was the one that had offended her when she first read my book in English when it was published in 2004. And she promised me she would translate this missing story back in Delhi. And that winter when I visited Delhi, this is the first thing that I demanded. Very hesitantly, she produced the translation. And my mother, she translated something that I never wrote. She had completely changed the story. She creates me, I create a story, and then she recreates the story. No one has the right, not even your mother, to change your stories. She had even changed the conflict in the story. You know, the boy on the train, he was trying to break away from family traditions, and she had generated a totally new conflict. Unable to deal with this situation, I stepped out for a long walk. And then I thought, my mother, she always wanted to become a writer. When she was young, she had even published a story in her college journal. And when I was growing up, I would see her writing in a diary. And sometimes she would burn her diaries because she was afraid that someone would end up reading those diaries. She used the diaries to calm herself down. When she was young, she asked her father if she could study Punjabi literature, and the well-meaning father said, "But then you'll starve. How will you earn a living?" So he said, "Why don't you join medical school?" And my mother, she quit medical school after a bad anatomy experiment. Now do I get to study Punjabi literature? And once again, my grandfather, the well-meaning father, said, "No, but you are good at maths, so you will study economics." So she studied economics, taught at a college, and gave it up when she married my father, moved to an army camp in the Indian Northeast. I grew up with her bookshelves filled with novels and other stuff in Punjabi Renaissance novels. And I grew up with her ears glued to a transistor radio. And during that walk, I thought my mother too had become a writer. By unfaithfully translating my story, she had become a writer. She had dealt with her demons, and now we had found a way to deal with each other through fiction. Mothers. So after this, what I did was the work that I'm doing here is a response to what happened there. The healing that is happening here is in response to that, because I said, "Mother, why don't you start writing your own memoirs?" And she promised me with a smile that she would work on a memoir. And I said, "If you were to write your memoir, I would translate it." And as soon as I said that, as soon as she started working on it, I was a little bit worried because she had taken no creative writing lessons, and now she was writing, so I created a long reading list. I planted Vikram Seth's mother's memoir there, and that didn't work because she didn't read it. She said that, "I'm not going to read someone else's mother's memoir as a model. I am my own model." And the most difficult parts of the stories in my mother's memoir are stuff about our family's forced migration from Pakistan to India in 1947. It was a very traumatic moment, the birth of modern India and Pakistan. My mother's memoir is filled with convergences of memory, post-memory, and transmission of trauma. And that is the book I am writing. That is the book I am making. That is the book I am hand binding. This is my link object. This is my work of mourning. I cannot show you the book. I cannot show you anything about the book. All I can say is I had even brought photographs here, but something within me didn't really move the photographs ahead. This wound is just mine, and it would not be meaningful to you. It will be meaningful only to the immediate family members. So I can tell you a little bit about the making of this book. I used the InDesign software, the most advanced technology, Punjabi pages on the left-hand side and English pages on the right-hand side. And I used the Coptic stitch binding, which is the most ancient book binding technology, to bring it all together. The spine is visible, and you can see the braids there. And as I braid these Punjabi and English pages together, what I see is my mother's title of the book, which is Time. And when I read the Punjabi words, I hear it all in her voice. When I read the English words, I hear it in my voice, trying to sound like her. And I hear her say to me, do not give up your dream and desire. Do not give up writing, your way of being in the world. And as I braid Punjabi and English together, I think about the two most important things I learned from my mother. It was the empathy for the other, and it was constant storage of memory, constant transmission of memory. And if I ever write another book again, it will be all about my mother. And even if that means that I have to explore new experimental forms of writing technologies, I so wish she could have been here today. My mother, my translator, my mother, my writer. Thank you.